Hey everybody, Real with Wes, day 2 coming at you, talking about actually the perception of empathy. The perception of empathy. Yesterday we dealt with the perception, and really, just brief recap, really was just talking about being able to filter and adjust our filter. And what are we adjusting our filter towards? Being more specific, humanity. Talking about walking in love with people and extending love and action towards people. So let's deal with the empathy side. And then we'll get into the next the 3 days, some other things I want to break down. But I wanted to start with this foundation, because if you don't set your filter right, everything else is like, where are we kind of going with this? I want to be very specific about it. We're talking about our perception, and our perception towards humanity, and that perception needs to be found in empathy. What is empathy now? What is that really? And I'm still exploring better how to articulate and explain that word empathy. That's why you're going to hear me use it a lot. And so I've been preaching on it some here and there, and I just want to continue to go down that, because I don't think we've arrived at what that is in our understanding. Nor do I think we'll fully ever arrive. It's just, we got to continue to grow, and it's really going to stretch and really going to push. The simplest form of putting empathy is really being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, is one thing I determined as. But also at the same time understanding with empathy that as best as you may try to put yourself in someone else's shoes and to see it from their perspective, by the way, and their perception of something, you never 100% can't, and you have to account for that. Why? So we come at this and approach it with humility, understanding that the empathy that we are giving, boy, we need it ourselves every day. And this empathy needs to be prized and valued, because that is the very thing Jesus did. Jesus was empathetic to be able to see people in their brokenness, in their quote-unquote sin, if you want to call it that, or their darkness or broken behavior. And when you say there, you cannot say there without including us. So all of us as humanity, Jesus was able to say, let me put myself in their shoes. The whole thing of coming down as a human being in flesh was this whole manifested word of empathy, by the way. See, God came down, created that flesh body there, represented in Jesus, which allowed him to be empathetic towards us in a whole different way. He experienced all the same things we experienced. Of course, he didn't sin. He walked out the will of God perfectly, because he was God in flesh. Let's put it that way. That's the exception to that. But yet he could be empathetic towards us, and we see that all through the Gospels if we pay attention to it closely. And he challenged people's humanity, like the woman caught in adultery when they were about to stone her. What was the thing that challenged? Put yourself in her shoes and judge herself the way you are judging hers. Better yet, not judge, is condemn, is actually the better word of that context of judgment. About you condemn her. And would you want that? Would you want your daughter to be that person? Would you want your wife to be that person? Would you want your grandmother to be that person? Would you want your mama to be that person? Your sister, etc., etc., etc. And of course, that hits us differently right there. Because empathy, when we're empathetic, allows us to close the gaps of proximity of relationship, proximity of culture, proximity of race, proximity of gender for a moment. Because it's easy when we have these large bridges of gaps to be unempathetic and be cold and be distant and not understanding. But man, as we get to know people better, as we bridge people, as we come in contact with people more, and we build relationships, it's going to challenge to be more empathetic. Because the people close to you, don't you give more exceptions to? It's like, oh man, all these harsh rules we apply, all our harsh religious rules apply, don't you? It's easy to look at someone, well, man, you know, they went up there and they stole, they went into that grocery store and broke in there and stole a bunch of cash and over there and beat the heck out of the store clerk. Man, they should go to jail. Forget them. I don't care. What happens when it's someone you personally know, though? What happens if it's your son that has a bad day and goes off the rails, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe my son did that. You know, yes, yeah, he should go to jail. He shouldn't have done that. He's a dumb idiot for doing it. But oh my God, he's not a monster. All those things are where empathy comes in. And when I start with empathy, it can keep going and going and going. We'll get further into this. But I'm saying, let your perception now of everything you look at in life and everything you look at humanity, politically, religious especially, all walks of life and backgrounds, be filtered with empathy. And when you do that, When you start trying to put yourself into someone else's shoes, what if I was in that situation? How would I want to treat? What if my loved one was in that situation? All of a sudden, everything gets a little different than this weaponized, forget them, go to hell, all this other stuff mess. Compassion wells up in that moment. And you have to start growing at it, because it don't just instantly kick in and just be like, oh, I fully get the grasp of that. No, you start the journey when you do that. But if we cannot, especially as the Christians, cannot start looking at things with empathy, we will never reach the heart, even close to the heart of God. We will always be on the wrong side of things, like we've been many a times in history, the wrong side of humanity, and judging humanity and condemning ultimately humanity, and actually be administrators of darkness instead of the light. That's the challenge I give you today. For us to fully embrace what God wants us to be and who God wants us to be, we have to embrace this lifestyle of empathy, where everything's not so just send them to hell and forget it. Where is this gonna help? It's gonna help you on a personal level. Imagine being able to see your spouse now with empathy, your kids with empathy. It just overflows, your coworkers with empathy. This is the place it starts, in your closest proximity, and then it spreads further and spreads further and spreads further is what it does. But it's a commitment to it, because it will go so against everything you've been taught, everything you've been heard. The whole undertow is to be cold towards people, to be self-centered, and empathy pulls you out of it. So go on this journey with me for the rest of the week. Listen yesterday so you can filter everything, humanity, with this perspective of empathy. And we'll cover the next thing for the next 3 days here. But this is all I'm going to be able to do in these short little 8 minutes, what they're running this week, less than 10 minutes, little clips here. It's just get you set in the right direction, because this is so much more. But if you'll take what I'm saying and commit to it and go in this direction and go before God, and then start filtering the word through this, by the way, and life is going to be completely different. How to live life, how to approach life, how to handle all your relationships, how you approach God, how you approach yourself. Everything will completely radically change, but you will love it. It'll feel frustrating at first. It'll feel like friction at first. But man, when you get it, it's so liberating. And you're going to go on the inside, man, I knew it was always supposed to be this way. I knew God was really this good. I knew really God was this much loving. But it will bang up against a lot of religion, a lot of bad teaching. But man, when you embrace it, your life will be radically changed and you'll be better for it. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. Catch you tomorrow.